And tonight our book is Scream Therapy, A Punk Journey Through Mental Health by Jason Schreurs. Jason and I met at King's College in a creative nonfiction writing course. Cooper Lee Bombardier was our mentor for the first term. Cooper asked if he wanted each of us to read our work. And Jason immediately volunteered. It was a pattern. Jason is that guy who always completed his assignments first, who wrote his chunks in gulps of vibrant, intense prose. He had something to say, and he wanted to say it fast and full of passion. I didn't know much about punk music. I still don't, not really. But Jason introduced me to what punk is about, how it's not just music, loud, screaming music, but is a world in which people who gravitate toward it feel safe, seen and not judged, a place to be themselves, discover themselves, express their individuality, a place to find a path to mental health in a world that typically does not offer much understanding. Jason's book deals with this and so much more. So now it's time, Jason, for you to tell your story. So I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks a lot, Susan. That was great. I wasn't expecting that. And it's been a great friendship over the years after meeting at school. I'm coming from the traditional territory of the Colehaman Nation, which is north of Vancouver on the Sunshine Coast. And the region has been renamed Kathet, which is a Colehaman word. And we're hoping that our city will soon be renamed as well. So pretty cool things going on up here. I think we're going to start with a bit of music. Let me just quickly do that for you. Okay. You get a random sampling from my playlist.
I'm soggy like paper mache, and a smile I say that I know everything's okay. I can't shake this feeling like I'm gonna die today. It's another day where I hate everything. My arm gets sunburned sticking out of my window.
Punk rock saved my life. My face leaked tears when I first heard those words come out of someone else's mouth. It happened during my very first interview for this book and the Scream Therapy podcast. My tears were happy tears, tears of validation, the kind of tears you let run down your face without wiping them away, because you want them there. I wanted them there. Punk rock saved my life too. As a youth, somewhere in my gut, I knew a safe place was out there where I could be me. In the punk scene, I found my chosen family. Our throats screamed raw, sinew and muscle tossed around with wild abandon. Embodied bodies in unison, individuality is a common cause. Punk rock isn't a music genre, it's a way of being. For as many years as I've been alive, gritty, outspoken, inspiring bands have led the charge for wellness. The punk scene has created a shelter with a welcome sign on its front doors, and those who make themselves at home find solace. Punk and mental health have always been connected. Songs about personal struggle have been yelled into dented microphones and launched out of beat-up instruments since the genre's formation in the mid-70s. Punk pioneers such as the Ramones, X-Ray Specs, Husker Du, DOA, Minutemen, and so many more challenged conventions, carved out a do-it-yourself ethos for punk scenes worldwide, and tackled the taboo subject of mental health without shame. It took me more than 3 decades to face it within myself. The effect punk has on those who embrace it, as it embraces them, is immeasurable. Take it from me. Punk rescued me from rotting in a mill town and pulled me towards the city, where underground bands played their hearts out in unlicensed venues, with sweat dripping down the walls. Punk expanded my limited perception of the world. In my small town, I had to pretend to fit in. And in the city, going to shows with outcasts in band t-shirts and ripped jeans was downright communal. On October 12th, 2018, I made an emergency trip to the hospital where a psychiatrist gave me a diagnosis of bipolar, a foreign word I barely recognized. As a lifelong punk, I was a storied veteran. As a person in a mental health crisis, I was a hapless rookie. Since my diagnosis, other punks have shared their lived experiences with me, and through theirs, I pieced together my own. Punk rock saved my life. Members of the punk scene repeat this mantra again and again, and it's hardly a coincidence. From its unflinching inception, punk rock, for me, for us, has always been scream therapy. Show 0, Crace Mountain, Nanaimo, BC, Saturday, June 30th, 2018. You're staggering on the highway shoulder, headbanging to wake yourself up. You've never been so exhausted. You crawl back into your red Toyota Corolla, the one with the 2 missing hubcaps, slide your tongue along your swollen lips and ease the car into drive, like you're cutting wires on a detonator. 5 minutes down the road, staying awake is unbearable, excruciating. Your eyelids surrender to the weight, as if they're tied to bricks. The car quakes, your eyes jolt open, and you see yourself veering toward the median. You swerve back into your lane. You thank rumble strips for saving your life. You're the leader of an improv punk band called Punk Jams. 2 hours before your near-death experience on the highway, you're readying yourself to play the final slot at Sinkerfest, an annual house show festival. Set time is an unfathomable 2 a.m. at a shithole called Crace Mountain. Crace, as it's known, is the ideal venue for Punk Jams' band of improv skronk noise. It's a dirty, gross, converted basement space with broken sound equipment. Drunken punks litter the backyard. Punk Jams is heavy on the noise, almost non-existent on the melody. Each night, you haphazardly assemble different musicians to wreak chaos. As the ringleader for a demented punk rock circus, you found an outlet to challenge your neuroses, and with it comes jaw-throttling performances. To add to your fucked up mystique, you've been carting around garbage bags full of Salvation Army rejects and makeshift masks. The Crace Show is the tour's final gig. Inexplicably, you booked Punk Jams to play 4 shows in the past 48 hours. Your tank is so close to empty it hurts, but you dig deep, just like you always do. You find a grimy bathroom upstairs and fiddle with the broken lock, then give up. You rustle through your bags and throw some choice costume pieces onto a sink counter. It's orange with mildew. In the mirror, you see angry red marks circling your neck. As you take a swig from a half-empty coconut water someone left on the counter, cold glass in your hand, a spooky twin shudders you into a flashback. Your feet all cut up, spilling blood at a house show in Nanaimo last year. It's okay. Nothing bad's going to happen this time. Strapping yourself into mismatched clothes 3 sizes too small, with a shredded lace scarf tied around your eyes, you look like a punk rock circus clown who smashed and grabbed a Value Village. A doomy guitar riff erupts and you fly down the stairs and charge towards the noise emanating from tonight's bandmates, your people. Overflowing with rage and joy, you unleash a bridge jumper's scream. The band turns out an uncompromising dirge, the backdrop to your ear-piercing screams for understanding, justice, help. Punk Jams is pure expression and emotional release, a desperate form of therapy, a way to protect yourself from yourself. Halfway through the second song, all 20 minutes of it, your vocal cords are burning alive. You grab another coconut water off a guitar amp, and the bottle slips in your sweat-drenched hands. Using a ripped crop top, tonight's upper garment, you can't find a grip, so you hand a bottle to a guy in the front row and make wild bottle opening gestures. The guy just grins at you, shrugs, and smashes the bottle on the concrete floor. Your brain sends you an urgent message: don't fall in that glass. Within moments, you slip on the beer-soaked floor and land hands down in the sharp, wet mess.
Oh.
Oh.
Jagged chunks stick in your right palm, and it gushes red. You don't miss a drum beat, barking nonsensical ramblings while picking glass out of your hand. You rip off your crop top and reveal dark, swollen bruises and deep scratches, shrapnel from previous shows, and tie the shirt around your spurting hand to slow the bleeding. You wipe blood down the front of the Bottle Smashers t-shirt for revenge, leaving a palm-shaped crimson smear. You stumble towards your drummer and collapse near the drum set as the final bass drum hit pounds your skull. 15 minutes down the highway, you pull the Corolla over again and you're back standing on the shoulder, shaking, deep breathing. A semi-truck rushes by at 140 kilometers an hour, threatening to blow your wavering body off the shoulder and into the ditch. You're disheveled, holding up your right hand, wrapped in the crop top, with an ominous rust-colored stain soaking through it. You're sucking in and huffing out now, nearing hyperventilation, and the last 5 days of bedlam rush back. Then, goddamn clarity. You can't keep doing this. You're killing yourself. After that June 30th show at Crace Mountain, I would go on to spend 9 more gloriously destructive days in August, sacrificing my body, your body, in the name of punk jams. Standing on the highway's edge that night, half alive, and melded into one with a whirling dervish I came to know as the punk screamer, I had no idea then what I know now. You weren't killing yourself. You were saving me. When they hunt me down, I'm still pulsing with psychosis. My sister, a psych nurse, fast-tracks me to a psychiatrist. The whoosh of the hospital doors behind me sounds like a skateboard, whizzing by on smooth pavement, speed wobbling my electric head. I'm getting out of here someday, right? My joke doesn't land with Meg and my mom. Their faces look as if I'm going to bolt into the forest behind the hospital. I'm led into the waiting room where I squirm in an ass-numbing chair and juggle a hornet's nest of racing thoughts. I'm clenching my phone so tight it's a wonder the screen doesn't crack. The psychiatrist calls me into her office and it takes less than 15 minutes. No tests, no family history, no checklist, no debrief, no soft landing. Jason, you have bipolar disorder. I'm not well versed in these words. I ask questions and can't comprehend the answers. My entourage is in the office now, and I look over at their blood-drained faces, my support system. My team, safe people. We have more questions. My mom has the first one. Are you sure? I've seen thousands of patients and I have no doubt this is bipolar, says the psychiatrist. It's the people who are depressed that we have a hard time diagnosing. When they're manic, like Jason is right now, it's very easy. The psychiatrist turns her focus to me. I'm going to prescribe you a mood stabilizer for the mania, she says, and an antipsychotic so you can sleep, okay? The pounding behind my eye socket subsides a little as she explains what comes next. Medication and sleep are the most immediate necessities for the long, hard road ahead. My lungs beg me to take my first deep belly breath of the past few days' skullfuckery. Now it's my mom's turn to squirm in her chair. The look on her face reminds me of the time when a doctor tweezed her sweater fragments out of the crook of my 6-year-old arm. A summer camping trip cut short by hyperactivity, scalding hot chocolate, and a night in the hospital. It's going to be okay, she said, through tears as she pinned me down on the emergency room table. Jason, can I ask you something? She's talking real words, here, now. Sure, what? Will you give me your phone? My 19-day descent into psychosis jumped between a reality and an online world that wasn't the real world, but was sort of the real world, but really wasn't. Okay, you can have it, I said. The thought sparks, am I free? At home, the medication brings me down for the mania, but I'm jonesing to post status updates about my diagnosis. Facebook remains the dark angel on my shoulder, goading me to search for instant gratification in well wishes and "you're so braves." I read online that a psychotic break is like a head injury, and the helmet fits, so I'm stuck wearing it. I collapse into the couch, hit shuffle on my iTunes library, and open the floodgates on loud music to dull my pain. I leave the house for disorientating walks, and the music soldiers on, supplying a cacophonous entrance song as I come back through the front door. Couch-bound again, blunt force trauma flattens me. Medication rescues me from the danger zone, but my moods ping-pong in a vicious cycle. Depression suspends me upside down in its torturous compression chamber, but I wriggle loose and bust out like a manic Houdini on steroids, my mind flooded with impossible magic. A week later, I'm depressed again. 2 weeks after that, manic. I'm a superhero, I'm a drowned corpse. I'm a superhero, I'm a drowned corpse. To a signature soundtrack of punk and metal, my superhero, name and powers to be decided, is back and hatching grandiose, elaborate plans, while runaway telephone wires swing towards my cerebral cortex. I can write a book and do a podcast while I'm recuperating. I scribble the words scream therapy in a notebook and the words podcast and book, and they sit there for over a year while I pare down a tangled mess of other ideas. The medication isn't keeping my mania and depression at bay, so my psychiatrist ups my dose for the cloud-hopping highs and adds an antidepressant to the mix for the bottom-scraping lows. Skull crusher vice grip headaches take me down for the count. Meds up, meds down, old meds, new meds. I'm trapped on a mood-cycling hell ride. I want to die. Please let me die.
We had the right tools, opposable thoughts and big brains full of useless shit. A long history of wrong turns and dead ends brings us back to where we started again. But since then I'm outranked.
Show 5, Nanaimo, BC, the Nanaimo Bar, Sunday, August 12th, 2018. You're scrambling into another thrift store nightmare, lost in your pre-show ritual in the bar's bathroom stall. Punk Jams is writing its second clobbering of the harbor city this summer, and this tour is becoming harder and harder on your psyche by the night. You've been puppet mastering a disgusting side of yourself for 5 days straight, a side you hide in your regular life. You fall back on the toilet seat and rock back and forth, hiding a demented Joker smile under your multi-layered mask. First, black lace cinched against your mouth and nose, impeding your breath. Second, a pair of ripped panties digging into your forehead and chin. Over top is a broken ski mask, its jagged edges penetrating the layers of fabric. The sharp plastic pokes at your jawline and you snap out of your disembodied trance and jerk up from the toilet seat. You're huffing and puffing now, shaking with adrenaline. An internal switch goes off and you're uncaged. You kick open the bathroom door and stomp down the hallway, spooking the bar staff along the way, ready to unleash a spectacle the audience of less than 20 people won't soon forget. Storming a stage barely big enough to hold your band, you spew a garbled stream of consciousness lyrics that pour from your trauma files. Your latest ragtag band of accomplices grin at each other and feed off your reckless abandon. Lurching into a failed handstand, you smash into one of your guitarists and knock a microphone stand on the way down. You wrap cords and patch cables around your neck, a makeshift noose, creating an impossible tangle of PVC coils on the floor. Then squirm around in the mess like a fish trying to outflop a wooden whacker. Flailing your arms, you windmill off swaths of ripped, sweaty fabric and expose your bruised and beaten trunk, which you've been pulverizing since the tour began. Gauze hangs from your hands and knees, revealing bloody knuckles and a reopened gash from last night's show on Gabriella Island. The scant audience is trying to figure out what the hell is going on, equally fascinated and disturbed. They heckle and jeer, and it doesn't faze you because you're a noise messenger and you're planting a seed. You repeat holy words to yourself. If you can do it, anyone can. If you can do it, anyone can. In your mind, you're the living embodiment of punk rock on the tour of your life. In your mind, no matter what happens, you won't stop until your punk mission is complete. In reality, you might crack and never come back. Something in her clicked. The word clicked smacks off Amanda Filippelli's tongue like the snap on a leather handbag. Amanda worked in the mental health care system for 10 years, teaching adolescent trauma survivors how to find empowerment in their stories. These days, she's an author, editor, and book coach who teaches connection and healing through storytelling. As a teen, Amanda spent her formative years in Pittsburgh's punk scene and found its positivity inspiring. She, in turn, became an inspiration to others when she started working as a counselor at residential treatment facilities for youth. In her work, Amanda leaned into her punk upbringing to further her clients' therapeutic goals. One afternoon, she was driving a girl who was living in a group home to an appointment and saw an opening. This girl was difficult to get through to, Amanda says. She'd been at the facility for a long time and struggled with addiction and self-harm. Amanda squares her shoulders. She tells me she also harmed herself as a youth. What clicked for Amanda's passenger was a song Amanda played on the stereo, The Young Crazed Peeling by the Distillers, a Los Angeles punk band fronted by the sneering, charismatic Brody Dahl. It was one of Amanda's favorites as she struggled through high school and teenhood and the pecking order at her schools. Amanda tells me the girl perked up as soon as the song's lyrics burst from the speakers. Are you ready to be liberated on this sad side city street? Well, the birds have been freed from their cages. I got freedom in my youth. One of the songs that protected Amanda from high school bullshit was now a pay it forward to a new generation, another punk circle completed. It made the girl understand it's okay to take this music and use it as an opportunity to lash out and express yourself instead of lashing out against yourself. And it changed something in her, Amanda says. Noting the girl's improvement, Amanda decided to incorporate punk rock and other music into her therapy sessions with youth. Most were stuck in a broken system, cycling in and out of mental health facilities, and the music opened them up, she says. So many of the things they were feeling, the frustrations, the anger, the sadness, the problems of self-image, even symptoms inherent with their diagnoses, were things I knew the music could help them express, she says. Eventually, staff allowed the girl to go off grounds and take part in field trips because of good behavior. Whenever Amanda drove the girl around, loud bands were their soundtrack. She always wanted to rock out in the car, she tells me with a blooming smile. It was a healing experience for both of us.
There's always someone there going, hey Mike, we've been noticing you've been having a lot of problems lately, You need to maybe get away and maybe you should talk about it, you'll feel a lot better. And I go, no, it's okay, I'll figure it out. Just leave me alone, I'll figure it out, I'm just working on myself. They go, well, if you want to talk about it, I'll be here, and you'll probably feel a lot better if you talk about it. So why don't you talk about it? I go, no, I don't want to, I'm okay. I'll figure it out myself. If they just keep bugging me, there's bills on the side. It's got me, it's two sides, so come and bring what's left side. You will laugh, anything, I'm bring what's just to see away. I'm not crazy, here's the design, everyone is crazy.
Living with a mental health condition is an ever-evolving learning experience. It's not enough that the journey is always changing, so is the language around it. I've been reflecting on something mental health activist Sasha DeBruhl told me, words that in retrospect have altered my life. In the days, weeks, months, and years following my diagnosis, when crossed wires between my mind and body threatened to snap under the weight of my history, my goal had been to recover. I wanted to punch bipolar in the face. I needed to overcome it, to win. Recovery meant getting better. It was my light, my way out. But the fear of living with bipolar for the rest of my life and the terrifying possibility of relapsing into another manic episode kept me from looking at the full scope of my mental health, the long game, one that didn't require a claim to swift victory, but instead a steady eventual recognition of stability. 2 years my junior, Sasha also lives with bipolar and has been stable for more than a decade. He's one of a growing number of mental health advocates moving away from the language of recovery. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the language of recovery. So what am I recovering from? Am I recovering and going back to the way I was before? Because that certainly is not the case, Sasha told me. A low watt light bulb hung over me as I stared at Sasha with a glimmer of understanding. Wait, I don't want to recover. To go back to the way I was before, the damage I was doing? The next words out of Sasha's mouth screwed a new megawatt bulb into my socket, creating a luminescent aha I'm still humming from. Transformation. I like to use the language of transformation, he said. I'm not interested in a mental health recovery movement. I'm way more interested in a mental health transformation movement. My thought pistons fired. Transformation movement. Through and out, not back. You don't look at a caterpillar that forms a chrysalis and say, oh, that caterpillar is in a state of recovery, Sasha said. And a chrysalis doesn't just stay a chrysalis, it becomes a butterfly. My jaw loosened and words dropped out. Do you feel like a butterfly? He paused for an awkwardly long time. Yeah, sometimes. The issue with the metaphor, he explained, is that we don't stay a butterfly either. It's a spectrum. I have different stages of evolution and transformation, he told me. No way have I ever felt like the word recovery captures what I went through, because each time I went through one of those experiences, I learned so much and I gained so much. Shortly after my diagnosis, I veered away from distorted and pathologized language, such as mental illness, towards person-first language like living with a mental health condition. One thing that never occurred to me before talking to Sasha is we can also challenge the term mental health. We call it mental health, he told me, but it's actually just liberation, individual and collective liberation. The Icarus Project, a social justice group Sasha co-founded in 2002, proposes that a person's mental state benefits from collective liberation. Sasha told me he prefers to look at mental states as sensitivities and dangerous gifts. Rather than seeing ourselves as diseased or disordered, we see ourselves as having wings that we have to learn to use, Sasha said. I really don't like talking about illness or disease or disorder or dysfunction. I want to leave space open for people to figure out for themselves what it is they're struggling with. When I got my ass locked up in a psych hospital when I was 18, and they told me I had a biological brain disease, I was so embedded in punk rock and anarchism, I said, fuck you people. Then Sasha busted out the lyrics to Suicidal Tendencies Institutionalized, a screw you to involuntary hospitalization. What are you trying to say? I'm crazy? When I went to your schools, I went to your churches, I went to your institutional learning facilities. So how can you say I'm crazy? Sasha moved on from the Icarus Project in 2014 and started transformative mental health practices, where he helps people who want to use their mad gifts to better themselves. Before we ended our lengthy call, Sasha left me one critical point to ponder. What if we flipped mental illness around and said, actually, the society we're living in is really sick, he said. Its foundations are based on genocide and slavery. Instead of just fitting ourselves into a society that's really broken, what if we use the fact that we're different from the society to try to change society? A content look washed over Sasha's face as he left me with simple yet life-defining words. I got that outlook from punk rock. I got that from where I came from. Thanks very much for listening.
Well, thank you, Jason. That was great. I hope that you guys have entered questions in the chat, but I'll start with, this is really a very expressive and telling your story book. But you didn't get into, like what did you learn writing the book? Let me put it that way. What things about yourself did you have to face in order to put that book on the page?
Ugh. Well, I ended up writing the book because I didn't know what else to do with I was in such a bad situation, bad mood episodes, just kind of like broken down, didn't know what I could do or where to start. And so because I'd already written so much stuff in my life, I thought, well, I guess I can try that. And went into the King's program. I think what I learned through writing the book is that I just like have to trust myself. I have to accept myself, and I have to remember the positive traits that I have rather than dwelling on the negative traits, because that can be very easy. The brain tends to go to the negative. It's just kind of how we work, I guess. I definitely learned that I'm not alone, like writing the book and interviewing these folks for the book. I'd already been doing the podcast, so I was already in the process of interviewing people every 2 weeks. But to find these people and have them share stories with me, and for all these commonalities, they, like I said in the intro there, so many people said that punk rock saved their life, like in the interviews, and I was just like, whoa, this keeps coming up almost every time. And that was pretty amazing to know that there's so many folks out there that share the same feelings about the music as I did, and the community and the scene. I guess another thing I learned from writing the book is that I learned a lot about mental health stuff I didn't know anything about. I also said in the reading, had never heard the word bipolar before in the context of it being a mental health condition. I was always just like heard it as kind of like a slur or whatever. Oh, you're so bipolar, that kind of thing. I never knew what it actually meant. So learning about my condition and learning about other people's conditions as well was just huge. The book was an exercise in learning about what I was going through, essentially. It was written in real time. It wasn't written. A lot of memoirs, they talk about, oh, leave 10 years before you write a memoir so you can reflect. No, this was like right in the moment. I was writing it out as it was happening. I was in depression, I was writing in depression. I was in mania, I was writing in mania.
Right. But you did have some events in your life that you flash back to that sort of contributed to who you were. In the book I read, you talked a lot about your youth growing up in Powell County, some of the places that you and your young bands went to were quite extraordinary. But I think if you're willing to talk about it, maybe go back to something earlier in your life that influenced you that you also found was a theme among people who were involved in punk rock and their mental health issues.
Well, back then it wasn't the mental health issues was kind of an unspoken thing. Like we were all sort of latchkey kids. We were all weirdos that skateboarded and got up to trouble and we were all listening to this wild, loud, fast, sometimes aggressive music. So it was kind of inherent in what we were doing that it seemed like the folks around me, there's a chapter on skateboarding, my kind of meeting folks in the skateboarding scene. We all had something going on. Like we didn't know what it was, but we all shared the idea that, hey, why are we sitting on a curb all day drinking Slurpees when the rest of the kids are in school or what have you? Um, and why are we going to these punk shows that are in these dark, dingy places? And it's just such a cool, amazing swirling of energy. And why am I at home listening to the heaviest, loudest stuff on headphones at 4 a.m? So back then it wasn't like we weren't talking about mental health, we were all young and wild. But I think definitely, first finding people that I really related to and the folks that were, off the beaten path. I live in a town that has changed a lot, but when I was a kid, it was all loggers, mill workers, and hockey players. And that wasn't a fun thing to be when you were a punk and a skateboarder and wore flashy clothing and weren't typical of what you'd find in a small town. So I think that was huge, being in the small town, having someone hand me music and say, hey, check this out, and it just like really sparking for me right away. I was looking for it, but I also say, did punk rock find me or did I find punk rock? I've never really quite figured that part of it out. I was definitely looking for something. But when my friend handed me these punk rock tapes, I mean, he must have known that I was ready for them, that they belonged to me, I guess.
Well, you write in your book about a moment like that when you were first introduced to, I'm going to get it wrong, Black Sabbath.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was the first band I ever heard that felt like it was for me. It was the ominous darkness. It was the heaviness. It was how are they saying this? Satan's laughing spreads his wings like that. Like you don't hear that when you're a kid in music, right? It's like it's all pop. So yeah.
So Angela Crooks White writes, Jason, it was a wonderful experience, and I'm happy to have been a part of this. I carry your book with me everywhere.
How does that work? Like in a satchel? Wow, that's really cool. Thank you, Angela.
And Corionet asks, was there a section of the book that you were particularly proud of, like real, holy crap, I wrote that moment?
I hate to say it because it sounds super egotistical and I'm not trying to be like that, but the whole book feels like that for me because when I go back and read it now and through the whole editing process and proofing process, which is a very long process, especially when you do it yourself, which I did, I would always sort of shake my head and say, well, where did that come from? I don't remember really writing that, or how did I phrase that? And I think what it was is it was like I'm a very stream of consciousness writer, so I just sit down and I just write, but then I go back and I just fine tune it and hone it to a sharp point. I think that because I had done so much work, first of all, spewing it out, and then second of all, honing it, that when I look back on it now, it just feels like kind of a little bit detached. Super proud of it, and I really think that I like it, and I think I'm a really good writer. But like, it's kind of the whole book feels like that to me.
And Brian Sachetta wants to know, are there additional things that you've learned since publishing the book? And if so, how do you plan to share those learnings in the future?
Oh, hey, Brian. He was on my podcast. That's pretty cool that he's here. Um, I mean, I ended up publishing the book myself. So that was, I put out records and I'd done like punk rock is all about do it yourself. So you want to put out a record, you send it to the pressing plant, you get it done, you put all the photocopies together, you sell it to people at your shows. The book was the same thing. This was obviously a very professional book. Like it's not, this my copy's all beat up, so don't look at my copy, but look at Susan's and behind her. A very professional book. It was printed at exactly the same place a major publisher book would be printed, and it was, I think, really good quality. But I guess there was so much learning of the industry because we were taught in our program a certain way, and but I realized kind of near the point of trying to get my book published by a publisher was like, I really don't want to do it like this. This doesn't feel right. And so I had to kind of reverse engineer how will I do this myself. I learned a lot about postage costs. That was a huge that was a huge blow, and knowing how much books cost to mail, which was astronomical. Not so much in Canada, but when I was sending books out to distributors and bookstores and people in the States and overseas, it was just ridiculous how much it costs. I've done a few presentations on the self-publishing side. There's a lot, there's a lot to learn. I think as far as maybe just writing the book, I don't know. I just learned that I could do it. I don't know how I'm gonna pull out another one, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Well, I love it that you decided that you were going to be Flex Your Head Press. So
Yeah.
and the reason why did you choose that name, and why did you decide you didn't want to just leave it blank?
Yeah. So I'm really into the Washington, D.C. hardcore scene. It was one of the most influential scenes in punk. And it was a scene that really was about do it yourself. It wasn't a scene like New York or LA where like it was very insular in that way. And so there's a compilation album called Flex Your Head. And there's also a song by this band called Minor Threat where Ian MacKaye, who's the lead singer, screams "Flex Your Head." And also, that's just it's been coming up through my life. I used to listen to a radio show called that, and it's just the idea is like being able to expand your perception of the world and be able to like look at things in a different way. And that was what the book was all about in regards to mental health. It was like, how do we look at mental health in a way that isn't dictated to us by, the psychiatric model and the DSM and all these things that we're kind of told, oh, you're this or you're that. And so I wanted to really get the image of expanding those perceptions.
Well, speaking of those perceptions, I know that you're really active with groups that you run about mental health, bipolar. Would you talk to us about those a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. So I run a support group for bipolar folks in BC. It's a province-wide, and we have about 500 people on our list that we send out, and we usually get about 30 to 40 people a week on Zoom. And I don't know, one of the things that I really felt like I needed to do when I was having such horrible mood episodes and just not liking life at all, was to sort of reach out to other folks and try to help as much as I could. So I started volunteering, and the support group was the first thing that at the hospital when I was out of the hospital, my psychiatrist said, you should try this thing. And they give you all these modules of therapy, right? And one of them was a support group. And it was the one that really stuck for me because I couldn't learn. My brain was just like, I remember being at a DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy course, and just had my head on my desk the whole time. I couldn't listen. I couldn't intake any information. So to be around folks that were like, could understand me and were like me in some ways, whether it was diagnosis or just the struggles that I was going through, was so much more valuable than taking a course or doing talk therapy even. I do all that stuff too, but like the best thing was the support groups. So to be able to set those up was really valuable for me, and I've been doing it for about 4 years, and it's just really cool to see who flows in and out. It's really cool to see the problems that we're dealing with and how there's so much similarities in whether it's our symptoms or the people around us or even our dailies. It's really inspiring to see. And people that come to it are like, oh, geez, like finally, like I feel like I'm understood by people, and I can talk about bipolar and people get it. It's very, very, for any mental health condition, it's very isolating and alienating to know that people just will never understand like we'll never understand what's inside each other's heads, and that can be really scary and can just be really like can beat you down. So to have folks around that can understand at least some small way is really great.
You spoke about changing the language. Speaking of that, changing the language around mental health. So do you make a point of being very conscious about using transformation kind of language in your groups and stressing those kind of things and
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Not so much in the groups because it's peer support and we're all in it equally. Like don't want to tell anybody, oh, don't use that language. Like I think I say in the book somewhere, like I'm not here to be a language cop. Like it's what I believe and how I speak. I think in everyday interactions, I definitely use the non-pathologized language, because I think it's important that folks out there and about know how I feel about that kind of language. But like I said, the people that come to the group are in all different stages of diagnosis. When I first got diagnosed, I was like, I'm sick, I'm disordered, I'm diseased. Like that was my feeling about myself too. But as I've stabilized, I'm learning more about myself. Even the positive traits that come with bipolar, like it's a very you can be very creative, you can be moving fast, you can get things done, you can be introspective when you're depressed. Like those are all good things, right? I mean, there's some horrible crap that comes with it too, but so yeah, I think in the everyday world, I'll use a certain kind of language to make it an awareness, but within our circle of folks that are dealing with it, it's we're all at different stages.
So Carrie Eberhardy says, hi, Jason.
Hi, Carrie.
This has been so great. Can you speak to any observations of youth now and how the punk scene remains relevant? Anything similar, different?
Oh wow. So this is a great one because I book shows in town. I book punk shows when bands come through, and I have my own band that we do shows. And I was talking to one of my friends who I also play music with on a different thing and said, do you think there's any like young people that play punk in town? And we're like, well, I've never heard of any bands, like not, we don't think so. And then all of a sudden I heard about this show that I had no idea was even happening. And there was 5 youth punk bands playing it. So unbeknownst to me, there was 5 punk bands in my town that were playing that were all like under the age of 20. In context, there's probably only about 3 or 4 other punk bands, not even that, maybe 3 other punk bands that aren't youth. So it was just like this mind-blowing moment. And so I started putting on shows for them. And um, a lot of queer youth come into the punk scene. A lot of, despite, a lot of people think that punk scene is all like sweaty guys in the mosh pit. And it's very diverse. I hate the word diverse, but yeah, we'll say diverse. So I think the youth that were part of these bands were like, I recognized a lot of me in them. I recognized how excited they were about punk rock. I recognized that they were still coming to it for the same reasons. I don't know how it works. It's one of those things where it's always there and people find it. And I don't know why I could analyze why it's been such a thing for so long. I think all the things I talked about in the opening part of the book there still apply. Luckily technology and our separation, distancing from each other and in the common day or the current day, we've somehow gotten past that to still have punk rock and people use, all the technology to make it even cooler. So yeah, no, it's still there. I don't think it'll ever go away. I'm not sure if I'll ever go away either. Keep going to punk shows until I'm 70 or yeah.
I know Fest has been a big part of your life. And you
Yeah.
used to, yeah, talk about that and how it was when you finally went back after this year, I think last fall, right?
Yeah. Well, in the book I talk about how Fest is such a um, spark for me. It's such a place where things, we can come together with folks from all over the world. We all have punk in common, but I can get inspired and go home and do other things. And um, part of the issue with Fest in previous years was because I was going through manic episodes and because traveling can cause mania to spike because you're excited and you're going somewhere different. And so I would go to Florida where Fest is, and I would be really erratic and it was fun. I wasn't like, I was still having a good time and I'd come away from it not being like, nothing bad happened necessarily. But as I became more and more stable, it became clear to me like how important it is to people that to go to that thing and to see all these bands playing. And I kind of stepped out of like just being in it and like running around into 20 different venues and seeing like 60 bands in 3 days or whatever it was, to like really sort of taking my time and observing. I wrote the book before I started observing, so that's the chapters about Fest kind of show that arc. But yeah, no, it's just amazing. It's like they call it a family reunion for punks in Florida. I think it's just a really good place to go to know that all these scenes all over the world are happening. Like you'll see folks from Japan, you'll see folks from all over the world essentially. And to know that there's punk scenes in all those places and they're coexisting and connecting is pretty amazing. I love it. Love going there.
Yeah. So Philip Llanos says, did you find writing, publishing, promoting the book to be emotionally healing experience similar to performing music? Speaking of sort of fast and being an observer.
Yeah. Hey, Philip. Yeah, it was. It's different, because you're mostly at your desk, you're mostly dealing in paper, you can music is such a visceral experience, playing live is such a visceral experience, like seeing bands is just like right there and it's in your face. One of the ways that I was able to get into that sort of mindset was I listened to music through the whole writing of the book. So I was able to just be in it the whole time. I can't really write very well unless I have music to sort of shut off my brain. I also deal with attention deficit hyperactivity. So if I'm not like zoned out by something, sounds weird. You listen to this chaotic music and that relaxes your mind, but that's how it works for my mind. But yeah, it is different. I mean, promoting the book is you still sit at the tables and sell the books, but you got to be at a punk show to do that if you want to like be in the music. I mean, I did lots of bookstore readings and stuff, but I see them as being two different things with some similarities in the actual energy of it, right? Like this is still a very punk rock book. And I've been doing it myself in a punk rock way. But it's almost like serving the music in some ways. It's like, here's the book, now go listen to the music.
Well, speaking of listening, you've mentioned that you yourself have gotten into writing and playing music again. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I decided to actually play music in a controlled way because the punk jam stuff is pretty wild. And there was not a lot of musicality to it. It was basically just me screaming my face off and dressing up in ridiculous costumes. And on a more serious side, like, like self-harming in some ways. But the bands I'm playing in now, I'm playing guitar for the first time, which is really fun. Learning how to write songs, kind of, learning how to sing, kind of. But it's definitely a different speed than just, grabbing the microphone. Pretty much all the bands I've been in, it's just been me like, screaming in a microphone. So this has been really, really interesting and cool to see how music actually works. Like, oh, that's what that thing's called. That's like A chord or whatever. Who knew?
I'm just running through this. So I think you've actually touched on this question, but Wendy Elliott is asking, do you think that the actual writing made you stronger? And I think you kind of talked about that, but you might want to talk about it some more.
Well, yeah, I needed to do it. I don't think I would have survived if I hadn't written it. So in that sense, it made me stronger. Um, it was more like a processing and purging and yeah, it was more like a swirling of emotions. It wasn't so much like me feeling like the writing made me stronger. The experience did, like learning from all these folks and like interviewing them all and writing about their experiences, my experience. That part of it made me. I'm kind of stuck on the word stronger. I'm not sure that's the word that really fits, but maybe I'm just being, I don't know, self-defecating or something. I don't know. Yeah.
No,
I don't know if
so
stronger makes sense. Yeah, I mean, maybe someone that maybe looks at me and says, hey, like when you first started writing the book, you were this and now you're this, may say that. But one of the problems with mental health stuff is when you're in it, you don't really notice the improvements as much as other folks would, right? So I don't really, there's been a gradual improvement to my mental health and my stability and my mood episodes, but because they're still there and because they still prop up and feel worse or better, it's hard to really say where where the improvements are. I just see them very, very slowly. Yeah.
I just think from my point of view, listening to you over the course of the MFA program and listening to various chunks, I watched you. You were right. You were stream of conscious writing. It was all coming out just as it was happening to you. But because you were writing a memoir and you were writing your truth, you also had to deal with things. I think this might be what Wendy might be getting at. You dealt with things that you might not have come up just in the way they were if you hadn't written them, is the thing.
Yeah. Some stuff definitely came up, or came out, I mean. Memories like that memory of my mom pinning me down on the table when I was a kid, like picking the fragments out of my arm, the doctor taking the tweezers and all, like that was something that just came up as I was writing. It wasn't like I want to make sure I put in that little thing. Like it just came out. And that's a very small microcosmic example of some of the stuff that came out in the book, is a lot more intense, I guess you could say.
Oh, new message. Let's see what we got here. Nope. No, there isn't a new message. Well, I have to say, I very much appreciate that you wrote the book, that you were willing to delve into your own experience and just lay it out there, as any sort of creative musician would. I mean, every piece of music is an emotional outpouring of what's inside of you, whether it's screaming or whether it's soft chords or whatever. But it takes a kind of vulnerability and strength, inner strength, to do that, and then to fight through all your issues. It's really a remarkable story. I feel so glad I got to meet you.
Me too. Yeah.
And we were just there together. It was just by chance that we were in that first group together.
Yeah, it's
So
like these two people that you would never expect to be such good friends. This person that's never heard punk rock before, and yeah, no, it's been great to meet all the folks that have ordered the book. That's another big reason why I wanted to do it myself, because I have that connection with people directly, and like they've sent me an email or sent me a letter, not a letter. They sent me an email or something that I can actually connect with them. I can sign the book for them. Like that's been really nice to be doing direct stuff like that, and actually hear back from them too, which is really cool. I'm not sure how much most writers get that when they write a book, if it was published into a larger publisher, but like I'm getting a lot of people giving me some feedback and stuff after they read it, which is great.
I think that's a great marker. And did you tell me you're in your second printing now already? Or you
1,200 copies is what I'm at. So I've probably got maybe 100 left in the basement where my books stay with my mailing materials. So I don't know if but yeah, I think this is the third time that I've reprinted them. Yeah. Yeah, it was funny because I was saying to my partner, Meg, I was like, well, like, I don't know, this is kind of slowing down and I don't feel like it's selling the way it should be. And, like, and she's like, well, like a bestseller in Canada is 1,000 copies. And I'm like, huh? Okay. I had no idea. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's true. Well, listen, I think we're just about out of time. And if anybody has any last parting questions or comments, now's your time to jump in. And otherwise, I think we'll all extend a great hand clap to you and thank you for taking the time and coming to talk to us. I really, really, really deeply appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Susan. Thanks everybody for coming. Nice to see you all.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.